Hello. Hi, everyone. So that's the palace we're heading to, the Rumyantsev Palace. It's not called the Romanov Palace because it's named after its most glorious owner, and these are not Romanovs. It's Count Rumyantsev. They're actually two brothers who was a great art collector, especially ancient books and manuscripts collector. He also worked as the arts agent for Catherine the Great, but he managed to serve under four different monarchs, believe it or not. And he established in his own house, which he had rebuilt to be more suitable for a museum exhibition, he left for himself three rooms. And the rest was redesigned for exhibiting purposes. And he established a big museum here. It was the first privately owned museum in the Russian Empire in the end of the 18th, early 19th century. That's incredible. And he had 28,000 books and ancient manuscripts. After his death, after his brother passed away, unfortunately, the collection was divided between several facilities. And the core of the collection, most of the ancient books and manuscripts ended up in Moscow. Um, and you can now find the artworks and books from his collection, from his private collection, scattered all across the country. But since well, I spoke about it in detail last time. I'm not going to talk about it now. You can find the recording, it's still available, and I'm going to keep it available for a couple of more days. That's not an issue. But since we're talking about Romanovs, let's understand which exactly Romanovs we're talking about. And there are going to be a lot of very similar names. I'm sorry. So let's start from the beginning. We're going to be talking about the descendants of the daughter of Emperor Nicholas I, Grand Duchess Maria Nikolaevna. That's her. And she was the daughter of Nicholas I. Just in case. That's him. You know more confused with Nicholas I, Nicholas II, Nicholas I, mid 19th century. And she married Maximilian. Sorry. Okay, let's do like this. She married Maximilian de Beauharnais, who was the descendant of Napoleon's first wife, Josephine, who was prior to that married to Alexander de Beauharnais. So Maximilian de Beauharnais was a grandson, sort of related to Napoleon in a way, so not in the bloodline, but anyway. And the descendants of Maximilian and Maria Nikolaevna decided to purchase this house in late 19th century. So that's Josephine de Beauharnais. And so these are the Maria Nikolaevna and Maximilian de Beauharnais. And the Romanovs I'll be talking about is Eugene or Evgeny Maximilianovich. So he was the son. And his wife, his second wife, by the way, Zinaida Dmitrievna Skobeleva. Zinaida Skobeleva. Dmitrievna is the patronymic name, so I will sometimes refer to her Zinaida Dmitrievna, but it's not that relevant. What is important that she was one of the most beautiful women of her time, considered by her contemporaries. She was a socialite, a party animal, and judging by the size of the emeralds, this is sort of a colorized photo. The photo from Wikipedia, I'm not sure when exactly it was colorized and by whom, but so this couple indeed was infamous for many things. And so they decided to purchase this house. It was they redesigned it. So just as you look at it from the facade, it wasn't changed from mid 19th century, but from the inside, it was changed to the taste of the newlyweds. And yes, this is the palace that has really bad reputation. Well, nothing too dodgy, but I mentioned last time that unfortunately, the marriage was not a happy one. But indeed, they had a lot of fun. Since we already saw some of the interiors, I'm going to skip most of it. Well, I mean, what we have already learned, what we have already seen. And as I mentioned, the main staircase, it's one of, there are only three similar staircases in St. Petersburg, but the other two that used to be in St. Petersburg were destroyed during the bombings in the Second World War. So there's only one staircase that didn't have any support and any extra fittings just to secure it, because big part of these marble steps are actually built into the walls. And in the inside, I would say the interiors are very much eclectic. You wouldn't see a lot of Art Nouveau. It's still late 19th century. Art Nouveau hadn't really come into its own largely. And I would say that the family in general was kind of old style in terms of like old chic, old money. I would put it like this. We have some old photographs at least to see what it was like, because unfortunately in the Soviet period, not not much survived. Most historic interiors that we have, these are the results of restoration, scientific restoration, by the way. For example, this room, we saw it in the previous tour, so we are not going to stop here for long. But this is sort of because now this house, this palace, Rumyantsev Palace, is one of the houses, one of the museums within the Museum of St. Petersburg, group of, let's say, Union of St. Petersburg museums. So here they try to recreate the boudoir atmosphere of late 19th century. We don't find any memorial items here. We also talked about that, so we'll probably start here. I just decided not to cut the video, but to be able to show you a bit of this and that, just to refresh. And they don't have memorial items because they were all gone in the Soviet times and even before the Soviet times. So it's more like they try to recreate the vibe of the late 19th century boudoir of Zinaida. That was her. As I said, she was from, well, a very distinguished family. Her grandfather was the army general who was a hero of the Russian-Turkish War in the 19th century. Um, and she was considered a very beautiful woman and highly educated and of a noble descent. And this dress is the proof of the recognition, because this is the dress of the lady in waiting. She was the lady in waiting to Maria Feodorovna, to the mother of Nicholas II, and only unmarried women of noble descent, of very close kins to the Romanovs, could become ladies in waiting. And she was very educated. She was also quite talented. She was quite a good singer. She studied from Pauline Viardot, an Italian opera singer. And I don't know, she just managed to turn heads. A lot of contemporaries, when I read about her, a lot of contemporaries indeed, well, found it quite easy to fall in love with her. She just had this sort of charm. She doesn't look extremely beautiful to me. She doesn't look like, I would say, a supermodel to me, but there was definitely some charm in her, for sure. But unfortunately, most of her interiors did not survive. Some of the gala rooms, yes, some rooms of Yevgeny Bogorne survived, but most of her rooms are gone, unfortunately. So that's why what we see here is sort of the recreation of how her boudoir that we have just seen in the photos could look like. And also last time we saw, yes, there were some photos from her boudoir. That's the opposite side of it. In fact, we also saw some photographs of the interiors of Yevgeny Bogorne. So that's the boudoir again. And by the way, we can see a lot of similar furniture. The museum was able to find period furniture of the same period, and well, I would say they're doing quite a good job in recreation of that vibe. Because maybe because the restoration that they had was a historic one, very accurate. Yevgeny Maximyanovich was he was a military man. He was in charge of several army units, but he wasn't a very talented one, and he always was a bit of a pain for the family. By the way, that's what's left of his study. Um, Beautiful old Russian style furniture and the leather wallpapers, embossed leather. It survived under multiple layers of wallpapers of different Soviet organizations that were housed in this palace ever since the revolution. I will also mention briefly closer to the end of the tour, but at least we can this is not my photo, that's from the internet. We can imagine how more opulent it looked like. He, Yevgeny was, or Eugene, I call him Yevgeny because I'm more accustomed to it, but Eugene is fine. Eugene was a military man. However, he was a very lousy manager, and he spent most of his time just chilling in his smoke room. And that's, by the way, as I said, now the museum, the house belongs to the big museum entity, museum complex of history of St. Petersburg, and this is now the office. But the thing that survived is the ceiling. This is the beautiful Moorish ceiling, clearly the sign of end of 19th century eclecticism. That's just super evident. That's what survived from the opulent smoking room. That it was common for many houses of end of the 19th century to have Moorish rooms, and most Moorish rooms would be the smoking rooms. So in it would be definitely room for men, not for women. And now here is a small concert hall, but it used to be a big study. There was a smaller study and a big study of Yevgeny Maximyanovich, but he didn't spend much time here actually working because most of the time, that's what it looks now. Uh, Quite opulent. The Again, as I said, the restoration work was incredible. This is all restoration. The fireplace survived. The wallpapers survived, but by under multiple layers of Soviet newspapers and wallpapers. I'm not sure about the paintings though, but the woodwork and the staircase, the small staircase that connected the male and female half, his and her half of the house. It's not really a palace, it's a mansion, but I'll probably allow the slip of the tongue because it's still not really much difference here. It's just smaller than the palace. So here, the two parts of this house were connected with this staircase. In general, Yevgeny Maximyanovich, he had been married before. And the first marriage was an attempt to save the family of Beauharnais and Romanovs from a big shame. When he was a teenage, well, not a teenager, when he was, let's say, in his 17, he fell in love with an actress, some Italian actress, and he abducted her. They decided to escape. They went to Italy, and he had basically had to be abducted from Italy and brought back to Russia. That was well, the story is not mentioning what happened to that Italian actress. I assume things were okay. I don't know, but the reputation was really badly damaged. This is, by the way, the photo from um, 1906. And the I will be, I would say, jumping back and forth. But now, as we walk on this staircase, I explain why there are some really good photos of the house, because Yevgeny Beauharnais and Zinaida, they hosted some great parties. Their parties were among the best in the city, and the house was one of the most opulent in the city, plus the location, the English Embankment. It was always a very upscale neighborhood, upscale area, very close to everything downtown. So sorry for the quality. This is my video from 2022, January 2022. Just as well as my selfies. That's when I took them because I was planning to take it to this palace for multiple live streams on Hago, but only one worked out about the siege of Leningrad. I'm sure many of you remember those tours. Yeah. And that's when Zinaida asked the best photographer in St. Petersburg, Karl Bulla, to take detailed photos of her interiors and publish them in one of his journals. And that's how we have a lot of very good photographs. So thank you, Zinaida, and thank you, Karl Bulla. That's the glass ceiling, the original one, and it survived, as well as the staircase. And some rooms are now basically exhibition halls for temporary exhibitions. There is also interesting photo from the rooms that actually were not photographed by Karl Bulla. Karl Bulla only photographed gala interiors and some boudoirs, but the kids' bedroom, those actually had one child only, but the the kid bedroom, the children's room, and the rooms for the maids. They were not photographed, but there is a photo from 1930s. For some reason, it's just both a stove, a fireplace, and the Soviet period stove are together. I don't know why. I haven't been able to find any explanation. And the person who shared it, just a local researcher, also couldn't find any explanation to that. So it must have been something done for some Soviet organization that was quartered here in the 1920s and 1930s. The Obviously there were good photos taken of this drawing room. Look at this mirror. This is a gigantic mirror, and this is the biggest whole piece, just one piece mirror in the entire city, and it's late 19th century still. Just imagine, it just occupies the entire wall. In order to place it in this drawing room, as the restorations proved, so by the window, so here when they restored this section of the wall and the window, they found out that the bricks had been taken out and the fresher bricks were placed because this is how they had to bring the mirror into the room through the window, through actually the enlarged narrowing in the wall. That was the only way to bring it. Before that, I think I have a photo of it here on the video. They had a big uh, tapestry, which was a present in one of the trips of Yevgeny Bogarne and Zinaida. Yep. Um, and here they had parties. And also, some people say, so later on, I will share with you the photographs, but Zinaida also, since she turned heads all the time, 2 years after she married Yevgeny, she found a lover, and it was another Romanov. They were not really related, not by blood, obviously. She only became a Romanov by marriage. So she was not related to Grand Duke Alexei, who was the fourth son of Emperor Alexander II. And well, this she kept seeing the Romanov while she was married to Evgeny Bulgarnev. Nobody ever applied for a divorce. By the way, this is the original, the rock crystal uh, chandelier, by the way, and that's the period furniture from another palace in St. Petersburg, and that's the photo of the drawing room. So the piano is gone, unfortunately. So the that's the other room with the mirror. There you go. There are some photographs. Well, some photographs were taken by Karl Bulla, and some photographs were taken a little bit earlier. The floor is original. It's the same parquet floor. And by the way, when Oleg filmed it, Oleg filmed some of the gala rooms that were on display. Not all the rooms were available. So, and that's why, for example, the wooden steps, the wooden staircase, I filmed myself. That's an old video because Oleg wasn't able to film it. Some rooms were not available when Oleg was there a couple of weeks ago. Uh, um, so they were married for 10 years, and for 8 years she kept kind of staying and being in a relationship with both men, and both men knew of one another. And there are cases, it's not mentioned by Zinaida herself, but it's mentioned by the contemporaries and also those people who were frequent to the palace that on one and the same day and on one and the same night, both men stayed. I mean, Evgeny lived here. That's the tapestry. That's the photo from a bit earlier period. There you go. That's the tapestry, and then later on there would be the mirror here, placed here. So some claim that on one and the same night, Zinaida could actually stay with both of them. Was it a menage a trois, or she was just with one of them, and then with the other one? I don't know, honestly. Maybe I should have started this tour earlier while I still had some beer in me. Who knows? Also, original parquet floor. Um, what was Bogarnet okay with it? Yes, very much because he was quite low on cash. He was always in the black. And his first marriage was supposed to save him from big debts. By the way, the photographs that I'm showing you, so the Green Gala room is not there yet. First, the Green Gala room was destroyed in the Soviet times. There was a wall placed here, and you can see this is the typical example of the Soviet uplotnение, when a bigger room was made into two or three smaller ones, and you could easily see that by the design of the ceiling. So that's a very common thing. So he was low on cash, and when he was brought back to Russia from Italy, he was, I would say, he was forced to marry a daughter of, well, actually a granddaughter of Mikhail Kutuzov, one of the heroes, one of the generalissimo of the Russian Empire, one of the heroes of the war against Napoleon. And it was supposed to save him from the dead, but well, that didn't work out. I'll tell you later why. So unfortunately, some rooms are gone for good. At least thanks to Karl Bula, we have photos. And by the way, let me know if you would like to take a tour of the museum and workshop and Photoshop of Karl Bula, because I have a video. Let me know. Why it didn't really occur to me earlier that I could take you on that tour. The history of photography. Wow, yeah, this could be that. That's Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich. That's the the lover of Zinaida. And he had that's him, by the way, together. So it wasn't a problem for them to take photographs together. They sometimes it was the three of them that would appear on one and the same event, and they couldn't care less what everybody else was saying. I mean it. That's how it was. And so this is the courtyard. And the courtyard looks already quite different, right? So the courtyard was redesigned a little bit to it looks more eclectic than the main facade. That's for sure. That's where you can see it. So the facades in St. Petersburg, they can play a trick on you easily. We know that already, as well as the courtyards, as well as the corridors and the mazes of courtyards and connection courtyards. We are not going to have a Q&A now. We're going to have a longer Q&A in the end. That's exactly because I'm running towards back to back, and I want to make sure I have some time on my hands. Okay, so yeah. So this is the courtyard, and we can see that the halves of the palace, some windows overlook one another. And again, we do not have direct first-hand account of events, but they say some of the maids that worked for the family of Zinaida Bogorne and Yevgeny, that the rooms of Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich overlooked the rooms of Yevgeny Bogornet. And again, as I said, because he was always in the black, he was okay because he got access. He got unlimited access through Zinaida to the Romanovs' wealth. And that, I guess, was reason number one for him. Again, did he have to put up with it, or he just basically enjoyed it. We don't know. Again, we cannot rely on rumors. We cannot rely of really how close the three of them were. Probably not, but who knows? At least we know that the three of them hanged out together and they traveled to Europe together as well. So the three of them. Speaking of Alexei Alexandrovich, he was, I guess, Zinaida just like the man with the love for adventure. We spoke about Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich a long time ago when Misha gave a tour on less known Romanovs. Misha did a series of tours on Grand Dukes and Grand Duchesses Romanovs, the less known ones. And we can't expect you to remember all that, but this might ring a bell to you. So Zinaida really liked the man with a passion for uh, escapes, forbidden love stories, and all sorts of promiscuities. So he was the fourth son of Emperor Alexander II, and well, he fell in love when he was just a boy, a teenager. He fell in love with a lady in waiting to his mom. That's her. She was the daughter, by the way, of a renowned Russian writer, Derzhavin. It's Ekaterina Derzhavina, and she got pregnant. And he was ready to get married. He was ready to marry her, but a Romanov could not marry a lady in waiting. A lady in waiting was supposed to be from a noble family. That's true, but that wouldn't be an equal marriage. That wouldn't be an equal marriage. That would have been a mesalliance. Terrible, terrible thing. A horrible thing. Scandal, right? So that's why what the Romanovs did. Um, that's an interesting story, by the way. So, um, okay, we have two legends here. One legend claims that eventually they managed to get married secretly. And even though they didn't live together, Alexei Alexandrovich carried on supporting the child. And we know that eventually the child was born and grew up into this beautiful gentleman who further on would be recognized as a Romanovsky, but not at that point. But the official story is that that the the Romanovs decided to send him away to circumnavigate the world. And since Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich further on was supposed to become the head of the entire fleet, he had a big ship called Svetlana, and he sailed on a big business trip slash circumnavigation. So the child was born without him, and it seems quite unlikely that Alexei Alexandrovich managed to have married Derzhavina because simply the timelines don't check. So it was easier for the Romanovs to send him away rather than he would get married to a lady in waiting and become a father to the child, a legitimate father to a legitimately born child. Of course, because it was so inappropriate. So he went away. And his circumnavigation was quite historic because he went on the very first diplomatic visit to the USA. That was the very first Romanov's visit to the USA in history. And we spoke about it in detail with Misha, so I'm just going to uh, just give you some, I would say, some basic things. So he was greeted by the president. He liked hunting very much. Many Romanovs liked hunting very much. So he decided to have a little bit of the wild west experience. And he was introduced to Buffalo Bill, and they arranged a very big bison hunt for several days. Eventually, it lasted for a week or so, and they killed dozens of bisons. That's him. And in the States just after bison hunting. There were there was a I would say a lot of coverage. There was a lot of coverage from, I would say, local newspapers. I mean, American newspapers. There was a lot of caricatures as well. I would say, well, look at this. So someone just all the uh, indigenous people, as well as the Americans, and also the Russian, I would say, officers that were accompanying Alexei Alexandrovich. They just, as you see, all of them decided to climb the tree because they were afraid of the bisons. That was, yeah, it was hilarious. I bet it was hilarious, and he enjoyed his trip very much. There were a lot of parties through, and I mean, it was good from the point of view of diplomacy. And this is when some American goods appeared on the market. And in general, there would be more and more visits further on. It was the first one, and it went really well. You know, they hit it off like a fire, like a house on fire, with the president, with Buffalo Bill, with some of the SWA, Native American Indians, several of them. And yeah, so he enjoyed it very much. And then he returned to St. Petersburg. He returned, and he finally became in charge of the fleet. So he was the commander in chief of the entire fleet for several years. Uh, and So we don't know whether he kept in touch with Derzhavina, whether he kept in touch with the son, or he just supported them financially. That we know, and we know that Romanovs took on all the all the costs of raising the child. So they didn't throw Derzhavina away. No, they carried they cared for Derzhavina and the child, but nobody was supposed to know whose child this was. By the way, this room used to be one of the rooms on the half of Yevgeny Bogorne, and so this is the ship. This is the model of the ship of Rumyantsev. Of course, Bogornes knew to whom the palace belonged. By the way, that's Alexei Rumyantsev. Let me show you his portrait. Hold on a second. Yeah, there you go. That's him. We know that Rumyantsev also arranged several circumnavigations for the exploration of the Far East and the far north of Russia back in the end of the 18th century during the Catherine the Great times. And obviously, Evgeny Bogorny knew that, acknowledged that, and he indeed had a collection of small ship models. Linda, thank you so much for the tips. Thank you for the coffee. So yeah, there were some models. They knew who Rumyantsev was, but obviously this arrangement is is of only 20th century, maybe even 21st century for museum purposes. So since this place is so eclectic and it tells you many different stories, it's very hard to stick to one timeline. And now we're going to see, well, this room. This is the video that Oleg took. It used to be one of the rooms in that belonged to Zinaida Bogorne. This was, and now this is sort of a small exhibition room that tells you the story of the women of the palace. And so this portrait is quite interesting because, well, I mentioned that Yevgeny was married twice, and Zinaida was his second wife. So the first wife was, as I said, the Daria Pachinina. She was a descendant of Mikhail Kutuzov, so she was of a proper background. Well, it wasn't a very equal marriage, but the Romanovs were happy that Yevgeny decided to forget about his love affair with the Italian actress, and he sort of decided to settle down and tie the knot. So he tied the knot with Daria Pachinina, and she had money. She was a very well-respected woman, but she died at childbirth. That was the portrait of her in the room, and she died. So that was it. So that's the Daria de Beauharnais. She had the same last name. The original painting is in the Fabergé Museum collection, but I have never seen it on display. I guess it's somewhere in the storage. I don't know, but the museum obviously has a copy, and I assume this is sort of a. When I was there, I didn't see this exhibition, so maybe this is something temporary. Maybe it's already a permanent one, telling the story of women in this palace. And well, we can see this is a very old mirror. That's mid 19th century mirror, and also I mean, you can see the patina. You can see how well with the condition of the mirror, and that's the desk of the same period. Again, I don't have much information about it, but it looks like it either belonged to Daria Pachinina or it's something from the same period. But Daria Pachinina didn't live in this house, so this house was only purchased by Zinaida and Evgeny when they were already married. By the way, speaking of mirrors, now you got me thinking that actually this palace has four very old mirrors, and the the biggest one is definitely a record breaker because that's the biggest mirror. It's not the oldest, but it is the biggest mirror. And speaking of mirrors, again, when Oleg was there, there was another temporary exhibition about old houses of St. Petersburg. And they were all houses on the embankment. So they decided to sort of recreate the vibe of an embankment. And because of these mirrors, kind of, what do you call it? The decoupage mirrors, slightly aged mirrors, their reflection is a bit patchy, and that creates kind of a vibe uh, of um, of the embankment at night. But when I was there, it was just a regular room. It's the white dance hall. That's where the parties used to be held. And that's where we know that Zinaida Bogarnet danced both with Yevgeny and with Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich. Were they heavily discussed and judged? Yes, but nothing could be done there. Nothing. And she partied for the 8 more years. That's the photo from, I'm not sure which period, but it's the same room. You can see furniture here. It's probably Soviet times because this doesn't look like well, 19th century furniture. This must have been 1920s, 1930s when the palace was occupied by different Soviet organizations. We know that Zinaida she partied really hard. And 10 years later, she contracted some disease. Well, she developed diabetes before that. And then she contracted some disease and she basically died from it. She wasn't even diagnosed properly. I guess it was just a mixed bag of a lot of illnesses since her immune system had already been undermined. I guess that was the case. And so she died. And Yevgeny Bogornev, he didn't remarry. Duke Alexei Alexandrovich, well, he mourned her. He loved her. The thing is that we don't know whether there was, I would say, strong bond between Yevgeny Bogorne and Zinaida. At least in the beginning, they were in love and they seemed to be happy. They seem to have been happy. But with the Grand Duke, we don't know how Yevgeny felt, but he was well off for 8 more years, so I guess that was okay for him with him. But Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich was inconsolable because he, well, seemed to have been definitely in love with Zinaida. So that's what this room looked. This is the photo from the internet, and there used to be more mirrors there because, as you know, and there as well. But the mirrors are gone now. They disappeared in the Soviet times because mirrors reflect in another mirrors reflect in the window. They first of all intensify the daylight, and also they enlarge the space. We know this optical illusion. Also, speaking of the architecture of this room, you see this ceiling. It's called a caisson. It's a French word, basically for a big box. So this was done for acoustics. The palace is believed to have had very good acoustics. So they hired best musicians. They hired opera singers. Zinaida loved to sing herself because she was a student of Paulina Viardot. So she enjoyed herself very much. Um, Maybe they enjoyed themselves, all the three of them, together. Who knows? I could do some beer now. Anyway, I also shared with you that they were also smaller rooms that used to be part of the part of the palace, but they used to be uh, where the servants lived, where all the stuff that took care of the house and the family used to live. And I shared with you that those apartments were turned into communal ones, and the Museum of Communal Apartments in St. Petersburg is located in this part of the palace. The recording is no longer available on my YouTube, but it's available for my sponsors, and I can always send you a couple of links, as you know, to catch up on what you missed. So that's exactly the entrance to the exhibition of the communal apartments. But before the before the Soviets took over the palace, there was still some time for for the Romanovs to live there, and that's when so as I said, that the first wife, Daria Pachinina, died at childbirth, but the child was born, and the girl was also named Daria, and Daria lived together with Zinaida and Evgeny Bogarne, and she continued living here up until 1915 or around that, and then she left for Europe to study, and I will speak about her in a little bit. So that Daria Bogornev, that's the one Daria Pachinina who died at childbirth. There is another photo of her. Um, and then her daughter. Oh, sorry, sorry, dears. This is the daughter. This is her. So this is a mother who died at childbirth. So they look very much alike, and she was even named after her mom. So she died. So she was born. Her mother died, and the girl was named Daria, and she was just the spitting image of the mother. And Evgeny Bogarnev found it very difficult to just to handle such similarity. Even I confused the two. So the other Daria, shortly in 1914, 1915, she married Leo Kochubey. He was from a distinguished family. He was a businessman, and then she left him and went to Europe, just like that. She left him with the children. So the children stayed in St. Petersburg, and they continued living in this house up until 1916, 1917, and then all the kids went to Europe shortly before the revolution. So they were not the exiles, they were not the emigrants. They went to Europe. Their life was okay. We don't know much about them, but we know that they were happy. Nobody died. Nobody died from Bolsheviks, and that was it. There are a lot of photographs of the children, by the way. They seemed quite happy. They enjoyed themselves. Look at I think the girl and the doll look just absolutely similar. Maybe the doll was a smaller copy of the girl. And let me get back to Daria Kochubey. That was her last name. There you go. That's her mom that passed away, and that's her. That's Daria, the girl, the daughter. So then, after the revolution, in around 1921, no, 1919, the civil war was still in full swing. This Daria returns to Petrograd. That's, as you know, the name of St. Petersburg after the First World War, and up until it was renamed into Leningrad. So she comes to Petrograd with a recommendation letter. And with that recommendation letter, he quickly finds a job. She was a Romanov. Still, even though she had a last name Kochubey, Kochubey was also the family, well, it was the family from the imperial times. They were merchants and aristocrats. She managed to find a job at a local library and archives. And then much later, so she worked in this facility for about 5 or 7 years. And hold on a second. No, it's even longer because in the 30s, uh, someone, for some reason, only about 10 years later, I don't remember the exact years, but it's in the 30s. So someone somehow arrested her and she was interrogated. And she explained that yes, she was a descendant of the Romanovs, but she was friend with Vladimir Lenin. The investigator that interrogated her, um, well, thought it was a joke, but she showed him the recommendation letter that she came with from Europe in 1919. And that letter was indeed signed, written by Vladimir Lenin. That's absolutely incredible. So was it that she came with with Vladimir Lenin's letter, or she got it when she was already in Petrograd? We don't know because Vladimir Lenin had already been in Moscow by then, so we don't know exactly how it worked. But that checked, and this information is available in the Russian media. I mean, in reliable sources. So, but that was the letter from Vladimir Lenin. We just don't know when exactly it was written. And for all these 10 years, she was spared. It's like nobody even noticed her, but she never really hid her descent. She never really kept it a secret who she was. Also, some people who worked with her at that archives, they remember that she would come up to everyone and she would give them a hand to kiss. That was this bad habit that everyone tried to get rid of because it was immediately let the cat out the bag. Yeah. But despite all that and that interesting, very bad habit, very bad bourgeois habit, so she was put in jail and then well, she was executed in the 30s. Yeah. Yeah, that's the story. So Daria Kochubey, that's her. And let's have a Q&A because in 6 minutes from now, I'm going to take you on a tour of the Russian immigrants and Jewish immigrants and Georgian immigrants to Paris. The chat is open. Let me know if you have any question. I know it's been a little bit of a mixed bag because the palace itself is a mixed bag, and I try to kind of have a middle between some interiors and some stories. Plus, we do not have the accounts of events like from the first hand. It's most like hearsay, contemporaries saying this and that. But this is the story, and it's known for a fact that did the two men have other women on the side? Ellen, Yevgeny had been married before that. We don't know if he had been seeing anyone else, but it's quite likely. Alexei Alexandrovich definitely wasn't seeing anyone else. He was madly in love with Zinaida. Sure, Dolly, no problem. Enjoy the poetry workshop, and I hope you will not be distracted by a siren. And you can always watch the recording. Oh, interesting. Wow, Robert. Oh, okay. Well, you need to tell me more in DM. Send me a DM. I want to know more you had from Lenin. Interesting. Okay. So Yes, well, Oleg have very little time. He told me that he first even said no because I contacted him and said, "Hey, I did a video of a communal apartment museum like yesterday." And then he said, "Well, Anna," he said he had been busy with several filming projects. He's now basically works both in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and he goes back and forth. But that is good because I've already asked him to film several locations in Moscow, and I know that none of the our Moscow guides have taken you to these places. These are very off-beaten spots, and these are most beautiful Art Nouveau houses in the entire Russia. So I hope I will be able to take you there sometime in summer. So yeah. So Oleg was very busy, and when he was in the palace, it was probably the most wrong time because very few rooms were available. So I had to go to my camera roll and find some lousy quality photographs, some really good selfies, but the videos were still lousy. I guess my iPhone, I had an old iPhone at that moment, and also some rooms were quite dark. So anyway, that's not bad. At least selfies went. At least selfies turned out to be good. Yes, it was a mixed bag, quite an interesting, quite a spicy one. Tomorrow is going to be another mixed bag, another spicy stories of the Romanovs in another palace where we have never been before. So, let me share with you, for those who joined a little later, I don't know if you saw the links, but I'm going to share them anyway. I will share the links for tonight. Also, I'm sharing the link for the beer festival tour that I had a few hours before that. And I think right now all the beer is gone, just it evaporated. So the recording of the beer festival is there. Russian Exodus, the next tour in 2 minutes, is over there. The next tour, also back to back, Summer Garden of Peter the Great is here. And for tomorrow, luckily, no beer markets for me anymore, but the crafts market by the lake. Ah, okay, okay, no problem. Thank you, Joy. Yes, that's the beer tour where Anna got a little bit tipsy, just a little bit, and also was all covered in the beer as well. Yeah, and tomorrow we'll be talking about, so that's Romanov Palace with another love triangle story. Then Michelle will be talking about the deficit in the Soviet times and how people try to think out of the box to get by in the hard times. And I'll take you to Jerusalem again to tell you about the walls and gates of the old city and the Temple Mount. Yeah, I'm all good. I recovered and I'm a bit thirsty now. I guess that's just one of the symptoms, right, of the recovery. I'll see you soon in 2 minutes from now on another tour. Bye bye. Thank you so much.